Before the lights, before the fame, before the world called him a genius, there was a woman whose voice could stop Ray Charles in his tracks. Her name was Margie Hendrix. To hear Margie sing was to feel the walls of the church tremble. Her voice wasn't just powerful, it was dangerous. It carried pain, joy, lust, and salvation all in one breath. When she hit a note, it was like she was daring God himself to listen. Ray once said, "Aretha, Gladys, Etta, they can all sing, but none of them can touch Margie." And he meant it, because behind every note of "Hit the road, Jack," behind the scream of "Nighttime is the right time," there was Margie's fire, fierce, unfiltered, unforgettable. She was the heartbeat of Ray Charles's sound, the woman who made gospel sound sexy, who gave rhythm and blues its soul. But like many bright flames, hers burned too fast, caught between love, fame, and addiction. Margie's story became a song of brilliance and heartbreak, a voice too pure for the life she was trapped in. This isn't just another story about a backup singer. This is the story of the woman who stood next to a legend, matched him note for note, and paid the price for loving him. Margie Hendrix, the voice that built a sound, and the soul that the world forgot. Statesboro, Georgia, in the 1,930 seconds, was a place of red clay roads, wooden porches, and Sunday mornings filled with gospel choirs that could shake the walls of heaven. It was here that Margie Hendrix first opened her mouth to sing, and the whole town stopped to listen. Born on the 13th of March, 1935, Margie grew up in a modest family that didn't have much, but what they did have was faith and music. The church was their world, the kind of place where voices rose to heal pain that had no other medicine. Margie's voice wasn't just another voice in the choir. It commanded attention. Even at 9 years old, people said her singing could make a grown man cry. By the time she was a teenager, Margie could play piano, lead the choir, and arrange harmonies like a seasoned musician. She studied the greats, Mahalia Jackson's power, Sister Rosetta Tharpe's grit, and the emotion of Bessie Smith. But she wasn't trying to copy them. She was trying to find herself. And deep inside, she knew the church could only hold her for so long. At 18, Margie packed a small suitcase, hugged her mother goodbye, and boarded a bus to New York City, chasing a dream that seemed impossible for a black girl from rural Georgia. Her sister Lula was already living there, working long hours, and welcomed Margie into her small apartment in Harlem. New York in the early 50s was electric. Every block carried music, doo-wop groups under streetlights, jazz spilling from basements, gospel choirs rehearsing for Sunday. For Margie, it felt like freedom. She enrolled in vocal lessons to refine her raw power. Her teacher, amazed by her natural tone, told her, "Child, you don't sing from your throat, you sing from your soul." Margie smiled. That's all she ever knew how to do. Soon after, she met Jesse Stone, a talented composer and producer who recognized something rare in her, that blend of gospel fire and raw sensuality that would later define her sound. Jesse introduced her to a young girl group called the Cookies, who were then looking for a new member. Margie's audition didn't just impress them, it stunned them. The minute she opened her mouth, it was like sunlight bursting through a storm. She became their heartbeat. Under Jesse Stone's guidance, the Cookies began recording background vocals for some of the biggest names at Atlantic Records: Laverne Baker, Chuck Willis, Ruth Brown, the Cadillacs. Margie learned how to blend, how to improvise, how to give emotion without stealing the spotlight. Her gospel roots fused perfectly with the R&B rhythm that dominated the city's sound. The studio became her second church, the microphone, her pulpit. But success didn't come easy. The Cookies were loved in the industry but invisible to the public. They sang behind the stars but never got their own headline. Margie didn't complain, though. She was soaking up every moment, studying how sessions worked, how to phrase a lyric so it lingered, how to deliver a note that cut straight to the bone. Outside the studio, Margie lived the life of a young woman on the rise. She'd go out to Harlem clubs, dressed sharp, dancing to live bands. She was confident, funny, a little wild, never afraid to speak her mind. That fire in her personality matched the fire in her voice. By 1956, the Cookies had started to make a name for themselves in the business, enough for word of their talent to travel. And somewhere across the city, another musician was listening. Ray Charles, a rising star at Atlantic Records, was searching for something new, a sound that could merge gospel's passion with the pain of the blues. The first time he heard the Cookies, he stopped mid-rehearsal and asked, "Who's that woman singing like the Holy Ghost got hold of her?" That woman was Margie Hendrix. And soon, their worlds, his darkness, her fire would collide in a way that would change both of their lives and the sound of American music forever. The first time Ray Charles met Margie Hendrix, the air in the studio changed. He couldn't see her, but he could feel her, that kind of electric presence that fills a room before a single note is sung. She laughed loud, talked fast, and when she sang, it was like every pain and pleasure in her life came rushing through the microphone. Ray was already a star on the rise at Atlantic Records. Songs like "I Got a Woman" and "Hallelujah, I Love Her So" had made him famous, but what he wanted next was something deeper, something dangerous. And in Margie, he found it. At first, she was just another singer he hired. He had his band, and he already had Marianne Fisher, his onstage duet partner and secret lover. But the moment Margie opened her mouth in rehearsal, Ray froze. Her tone was wild, not polished like Marianne's, not gentle like the others, but alive. Gospel in one breath, blues in the next. After the session, he told his band, "She's got the devil in her voice, and I want that devil in my sound." Oh? Ray renamed the Cookies and brought them on tour as the Raylettes. From the first show, audiences went crazy. Ray's piano burned with gospel rhythm, and behind him, Margie's voice screamed through the horns like lightning breaking through clouds. It was raw, holy, and sinful all at once, and people couldn't get enough. But with that music came temptation. Long nights on the road, long rehearsals alone, long silences filled with tension. Margie was fearless. She wasn't like the other women who threw themselves at him. She talked back, she challenged him, and she matched his fire. That was exactly why he couldn't stay away. Their affair began quietly stolen moments after shows, late-night studio sessions that never ended. Both of them were trapped between creation and destruction. Ray was already married, addicted to heroin, and carrying the guilt of every lie he told. Margie, hungry for love and validation, followed him into that darkness. Ray would later write in his autobiography, Brother Ray, that Margie was the only woman who ever sang like she truly understood him. He said, "She didn't need to see me. She could hear me. She knew the man I was and the man I pretended to be." In 1958, their chemistry exploded on stage and on record. When Ray recorded "Nighttime is the Right Time," Margie's voice tore through the track like a storm. That high, wailing "baby" wasn't planned, it was pure emotion. It was the sound of love, pain, and desire fighting for air in one impossible note. The song hit the charts and became an instant classic. Audiences saw their connection, even if they didn't know the truth. Every performance looked like a confession. Every duet felt like a sin. Then, in 1959, Margie discovered she was pregnant. Ray was torn between his wife at home and the woman who made his music come alive. Margie refused to hide their child, but she also refused to quit singing. She gave birth to a boy, Charles Wayne, and Ray promised to take care of them both. But promises mean little when addiction and fame are in control. Ray was slipping deeper into heroin. Margie, lonely and heartbroken, followed him down that same path. The music that brought them together was now the poison that kept them apart. Still, every time she stepped behind that microphone, she gave everything, her soul, her sanity, her love to a man who could never fully give it back. The world saw brilliance, but behind the spotlight, Margie Hendrix was already beginning to fall. By 1960, Ray Charles was everywhere: radio, TV, magazine covers. The genius of soul had officially arrived. But behind every hit record and sold-out concert, there was a woman slipping further into the shadows. Margie Hendrix, the fiery voice who gave his music its heartbeat, was slowly losing her grip on everything she loved. For years, she had been Ray's secret, his muse, his match, his mirror. But fame changes a man, and heroin devours what's left. The road that once brought them together now tore them apart. Ray's touring schedule became relentless, and the Raylettes were just part of the show backup singers behind a star who was too high to care who was hurting beside him. Margie could feel him pulling away. First, it was the late nights where he wouldn't come by her hotel room anymore. Then it was the quiet rehearsals, where he'd barely nod when she sang. When he smiled, it was that professional smile, the kind that said business, not love. And Margie, fierce, proud, too stubborn to beg, turned to the only comfort she had left. The same drug that was killing Ray. At first, it was just to take the edge off a little hit before a show. a small escape from the ache of being seen and unseen at the same time. But soon, she was chasing that numbness every night. Her once bright eyes grew tired, her laughter turned sharp, and her voice, still powerful, still soul-shaking, began to carry a new sound: pain. When she walked into the studio to record Hit the Road Jack, she wasn't just singing a song, she was warning him. Every note was a fight, every scream was a scar. The irony was cruel. Their most explosive hit was the soundtrack to their breakup. The song shot to #1, won a Grammy, and made history. But by then, their love was already over. Margie's drinking got heavier. The band whispered about her temper, her outbursts, her tears. Ray tried to keep his distance, not because he stopped caring, but because he couldn't face the wreckage they'd made. He told himself she'd get help. She didn't. Then came the final straw. Margie had started seeing one of Ray's trumpet players, a quiet man who treated her with the kindness she'd stopped expecting. But when Ray found out, he exploded. Hypocrisy or not, his rule was simple. No one touched his women. Not in his band. Not ever. In front of everyone, he told her she was done. No second chances. No goodbye. Just gone. The woman who had built his sound, who had poured every ounce of her heart into his music, was fired on the spot. 6 years of passion, pain, and brilliance erased in one cruel decision. After that, Margie drifted. She signed with Mercury Records, worked with producer Bowlegs Miller, and tried to restart her career. But the magic was gone. Her singles, Baby, Restless, and One Room Paradise, carried her voice, but not her spirit. The industry that once chased her now looked the other way. She was fighting two enemies: addiction and obscurity, and both were winning. By the late 60 seconds, she was broke, alone, and tired of pretending she was fine. Her music still had the spark, that sacred mix of gospel and pain, but the world had moved on. The girl from Statesboro, who once led choirs and commanded Ray Charles' stage, was fading into silence. She didn't know it yet, but her last note had already been sung. When the news of Margie Hendrix's death reached the industry in 1973, it barely made the papers. No headlines, no tributes, no flowers from record executives, just a short note. Former Raylette, dead at 38. For a woman whose voice had once set the stage on fire, the silence was deafening. But legends don't need applause to live forever. Margie's story didn't end in that small apartment, or with the heroine that stole her last breath. Her legacy was already written in every note she ever sang beside Ray Charles, in every tear she made the audience feel, in every gospel run that echoed through the next generation of soul singers. Ray never forgot her. He couldn't. Whenever he performed Nighttime is the Right Time, his head would tilt just slightly toward the microphone during her part, that ghostly scream of "baby" that only she could deliver. He once told a reporter, "You can find a better singer, maybe, but you'll never find one who meant it more than Margie." In truth, Margie Hendrix gave Ray Charles something no songwriter or producer ever could: emotion without filter. She was the raw edge that turned his music from polished rhythm and blues into something deeper, dirtier, more human. Their chemistry redefined what soul music could be: the collision of faith and sin, of love and suffering. Every singer that came after her, from Aretha Franklin to Gladys Knight, carried a piece of that blueprint. Margie's gospel grit and fearless delivery opened the door for women in soul to sound real, to scream, to testify, to hurt. Before Margie, most female backup singers were expected to stay polite. After Margie, they could burn the room down. But her influence went beyond sound. Her story, the brilliance, the heartbreak, the struggle with fame and addiction, became a cautionary tale in an industry built on using talent until it collapses. She was one of the first women in soul music to live publicly through both triumph and tragedy, long before the world had words like mental health or rehab. Oh, when the movie Ray premiered in 2004, audiences finally saw her through Regina King's fierce portrayal. The world remembered the woman behind the wail. King said later, "There wasn't much written about her, so I listened to her voice. That's where the truth was. And that's where it still is in the recordings that never die." Songs like Hit the Road Jack and Nighttime is the Right Time have been played millions of times, but Margie's voice in them feels brand new every listen, raw, painful, alive. That's the kind of immortality that charts can't measure. Her son, Charles Wayne Hendrix, lived with that shadow, the son of two people who changed music and destroyed each other in the process. He would later say in interviews, I never got to know my mother, but I feel her when I hear her sing. Oh. In the end, Margie Hendrix didn't get statues or Grammy tributes, but she didn't need them. Her power was never in fame, it was in feeling. In her 38 years, she gave the world more honesty than most artists do in a lifetime. She sang like every note might be her last. And, in a way, it was. But her voice, that holy scream, that sacred fire still burns in the heart of soul music. Because every time Ray Charles shouted, "Tell the truth," it was Margie who had already taught him how. Some stories fade quietly. Others, like Margie Hendrix's, echo long after the final note. She came from a small church in Statesboro, Georgia, chasing a dream that was bigger than the world she knew. And for a few bright, burning years, she was that world. On stage beside Ray Charles, Margie didn't just sing, she testified. Every cry, every breath, every tremor in her voice carried the fire of a woman who lived and loved too deeply to ever fake a single emotion. The industry forgot her name. The headlines never told her story. But real soul fans, the ones who listen with their hearts, they remember. Because when you hear that thunderous "baby" in "Nighttime is the Right Time," you're not just hearing a backup singer. You're hearing a woman who turned her pain into power. Margie Hendrix lived fast, loved hard, and burned out before her time. But what a flame she left behind. Her story is a reminder that genius doesn't always wear gold records, that pain and beauty often live in the same breath, that sometimes the people who stand just behind the spotlight shine the brightest of all. So the next time you hear Ray Charles shout, "Tell the truth," remember Margie. Remember the woman who did. Because the truth is this: soul music was never about perfection. It was about feeling, and no one not before, not since, ever felt it like Margie Hendrix. Her song is over, but her voice, that fire, that ache, that truth, will echo forever.